Our attention to this now. Between July and September, there was a marked resurgence in the economy as more people went back to work. But it came from a fairly low base. To make sense of the state of the economy, we're joined by former Statistician General Pali Lehohla. Good evening, Tate Lehohla. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, a lot is being said around how we should really be reading these numbers because off the back of it, 66.1% of a rebound seems quite significant. But of course, we know that that's not the full picture here.
Oh, yes, indeed. But at least there is a rebound of 66%. But I think what we have to do is as well look at the absolute numbers of Q3 last year compared to Q3 this year. We had 3.1 trillion last year at Q3, that is 2019, and now we are at 2.9 trillion. So basically, we are still lower than where we were in Q3 last year. And we're still so year on year, that is why the growth is minus 6%. But rebounds, of course, from a very low base. It would have been a miracle if we wouldn't rebound in the way we have. Just remember that from March up to June, there was a total almost shutdown in South Africa. And then from July up to September, the economy opens. So a rebound was bound at least to happen. But still, it's a long way to go. All sectors of the economy are below where they performed at in in Q3 last year, except agriculture, where there was a 20 billion on top of the 60 billion that was there in 2000, 79 billion in third quarter this year.
Mr. Lehohla, what are the specific indicators or areas that you're watching out of these results that you think government should be, and policymakers really, should be paying attention to, especially when it comes with the opening up of the economy? And if there are different ways that we could be contributing to how South Africa responds to the impact of COVID-19?
There are two ways in which you that GDP. It's the one which is consumption based, which is basically and then of course the production based, which is what we measure. But the two reports come out, and the one that should be very, very important in the light of a recovery thought of being through infrastructure bill is the gross capital formation expenditure. That's a very important one, and when you look at that, you'll see that that indicator was down for the 3 last quarters. There has been a rebound in that, but it's from a continued low base. And of course, embedded in that, if you look at inventories, you'll see that the inventories were down. So that's an indicator that we have to look at quite carefully, particularly from the point of view of the idea that government wants to rebound based on infrastructure build. There is also the issue of where do the jobs come from. Agriculture becomes important in that regard, but one has to see whether it is job creating. And then, of course, manufacturing, that is very, very capital intensive. An important one because based on manufactured goods, imports soar. We could see the soaring of imports, or rather exports from South Africa. And then, of course, the exports, imports difference. Those are the key numbers, I think, that we have to look at in South Africa. Government, yes, there is something that has to happen there.
The president, of course, announced the Reconstruction Development Plan as government's response to trying to revive the economy. And you've spoken about the infrastructure bill because that has a huge place within that Reconstruction Development Plan. Do you think there are any additional structural changes that need to be looked at right now that could perhaps leave South Africa in better stead?
Well, I mean, I've always argued that economic policy orientation is quite problematic. And of course, others have said the budget is not austere. And I say that there is a lot of austerity. And I think that it is that part of the economy that has to be relaxed a bit. Obviously, the Reserve Bank reduced rates substantively which meant that credit could be accessed easily. But that's still not enough, because if you think about credit extension, in 2005, it was 15%, it was growing at 10%. At the moment, it is 7%. And of course, the 500 billion or 200 billion that businesses have to access, they have only accessed 16 billion. There are major constraints, therefore, in terms of access to credit, which should help to a large extent SMEs. And if we don't loosen the constraints in that area, then we are not going to. So I believe that whereas the government put 200 billion on the table, there are constraints in terms of just accessing, and that is what has to be loosened up. And the context of credit, so that SMEs can actually access credit, very, very important.
Dr. Lehohla, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there for tonight.